boyfriend left me to die in the fire in order to save his sweetheart. After being engulfed by the flames, I was reborn back to the day when he confessed his love to me. Amidst cheers from the crowd, I rejected him and walked towards the desolate-looking boy in the crowd, but he held onto my hand tightly, trembling as he said, "Didn't we agree to get married when we grew up?" Agree to him, agree to him. As I opened my eyes, John was holding a large bouquet of roses, smiling at me. However, in my mind, memories of being swallowed by the fire resurfaced. Watching John firmly take away his sweetheart Alice, he left decisively, not even sparing a glance for me. In despair, I prayed to the heavens for another chance. I promised to myself that this time, I would not choose him. I would even stay farther away from him. Suddenly, a voice sounded, "Are you sure?" I was resolute. Yes, unexpectedly. I really went back to the day when John confessed his love to me. John and I have been childhood sweethearts. I liked him, the whole world knew. At the beginning of our senior year in high school, he confessed to me after evening self-study. That day, I thought we were finally breaking through that barrier of love between us. Later, I found out that his confession to me was just a way to make Alice jealous. Even in university, and after graduation, he remained entangled with Alice, in every ultimatum between the two of them. I was the one left behind. Finally realizing the truth, I asked for a divorce, only to be confronted by Alice at my doorstep, and then the fire happened. I didn't wait for the rescue, but watched John walk away with Alice without a second glance back. That moment, my heart died completely. So, this time, amidst the cheers of the crowd, I rejected him. The lively playground suddenly quieted down. In the past life, I had always been following John around, chasing after him, caring for him, bringing him breakfast every day, fetching water for him during PE class, preparing his stationery, helping him organize his test papers, waiting for him to go home after evening self-study. Everyone with eyes could see that I liked him. John's face immediately darkened. "Joy, say that again." I looked at him coldly. "Say it 100 times. I will still say the same thing, John. I don't want to be your girlfriend. I don't like you. I'm in my senior year. I just want to focus on studying." After saying this, the whole place gasped. There were whispers in the crowd, even if God himself said it. I wouldn't believe that Joy doesn't like John anymore. Maybe it's a strategy, but being rejected publicly, John's face turned dark with anger. I didn't want to be the center of attention. I turned to walk away, but John grabbed my wrist, his suppressed anger evident. "Joy, what's gotten into you?" What's gotten into me? He should be asking himself that question. When Alice came to me saying he would confess to me, it was just to get back at her. After their argument, Alice flirted with a male classmate, infuriating John, who then turned to me to confess. He was sure that I liked him and wouldn't reject him. He wanted Alice to give in. So he played with my emotions. I lowered my head, looking at my wrist that he grabbed, and one by one, I broke his fingers, pointing to the person standing at the back of the crowd. "Don't you like her? You too used me as a sacrificial lamb in your quarrel. Now, do I deserve all this injustice?" In an instant, John was stunned in his place. He watched Alice walk away, then turned to me with a warning tone. "Joy, have you caused enough trouble yet? Our issues are between us. Why involve others? Am I causing trouble?" This defensive posture only solidified the truth of the matter. I pulled my hand away from him, looking at him, word by word. "John, are you deaf to reason?" I said, "I don't like you." He sneered. "If you don't like me, who else would you like?" 17 years of knowing each other made him confident that I was meant for him. But after finally returning to high school, I just wanted to live for myself. I walked towards the boy behind John, the boy with a desolate look, Stephen, the top-ranking student in the grade. I stood beside him and said to John, "I like studying. I want to get into Harvard University." Then I turned to Stephen and said, "Study genius. I might need to consult you often in the future." After rejecting John, we fell into a silent war. Everyone was guessing that I would come looking for him the next day, even setting up bets, and I smiled. I made a bet too, forever. Really, has Joy lost her mind? Quietly, John was getting frustrated, because I didn't bring him breakfast. And I was getting impatient with his morning temper tantrums. It wasn't my concern. What I wanted now was to study, to not be disturbed by him anymore. In high school, my grades were actually very good. But in the senior year, I ended up staying in a local school following John's wishes. Later, I found out it was because Alice was also there. It was deliberate. When I opened my bag, I discovered the stationery set I had prepared for John. As I took them out, I overheard John's desk mate saying, "I told you, she wouldn't last through the morning," and John, with an air of arrogance, seemed to be waiting for me to serve him. I simply took everything out and handed them all to my desk mate Stephen. "Stephen, bribing you in advance. I'll be asking for many favors in the future. In the past life, my interactions with Stephen weren't extensive, as he was always studying. I occasionally asked him questions, but because I had settled for a local school due to John's influence, I didn't put much effort afterward. However, I vaguely remember him asking me where I wanted to apply. At that time, my mind was filled with thoughts of John, so I just pointed in John's direction, saying I'll go wherever he goes. Stephen didn't say much then. Now, as I handed him the stationery, he looked up at me with a cold, probing gaze. I smiled openly. Out of the blue. If you don't like it, I'll throw it away. Upon hearing the throw it away, John's face darkened significantly. He even kicked the front desk hard in frustration. Surprisingly, Stephen said thank you and accepted the stationery. Deciding to study hard and stay away from the two of them, I realized how far my academic level was from my target university. But I loved that feeling of staying up late battling with math problems, discussing different solution approaches with classmates until a moment of clarity. Soon, the senior year school assembly came. In the past life, I was pushed to the stage to confess my love to John, stirring up all sorts of emotions. How I regret the words I said then, encouraging everyone to pursue their crushes without regrets, believing I and John could get into the same university, and to enjoy the beautiful moments of student life. The entire school was shocked, even parents were called in. Now, looking back, I wanted to shake my past self for those love-struck words. This time, I quietly stayed among the crowd, studying word lists, trying to minimize my presence. But during the free speaking time, a girl in class suddenly suggested, "Didn't Joy learn broadcasting and hosting? Why not go on stage and say something?" Some people chimed in, "Ridiculous. Would she go on stage to confess to John in public? It would be embarrassing. Didn't she reject John? Is she now trying to make amends and confess her feelings?" I took a deep breath, knowing what was coming. They all wanted to see me make a fool of myself, and I understood that, given that my past self revolved around John. After 17 years of being John's shadow, even John thought I was just throwing a tantrum this time. Only I knew how precious this second chance at life was. I turned to look at John not far behind me. Our eyes met. Clad in his school uniform, he stood confidently, slightly tilting his head, seemingly waiting for me to go on stage and reconcile with him, to erase his previous embarrassment. In the corner of my eye, I could see Stephen's gaze. For some reason, I felt a bit guilty. Encouraged by the teachers, I stood up, step by step walking towards the stage. In the background, quiet murmurs began. If Joy doesn't confess to John today, I'll lose all respect for her. Facing the crowd, I adjusted the microphone, confidently spoke. Respected teachers, dear students, good morning. I am Joy, in the final year of school. I will carry the hopes of my teachers, fulfill my dreams, and facing the light of the future, I solemnly pledge. I will give it my all, not wasting this precious time. I hope all my classmates will persevere to the end, strive for a year, and let your dreams set sail. Welcoming me was applause from the entire room. In my past life, after expressing my love, it was greeted with whistles, laughter, and whispers. Finally, I changed the course of events. But I didn't expect John to corner me after the event. "Joy, let's talk. I have nothing to talk to you about." I didn't even spare him an extra glance. I walked straight to the direction of the classroom. John caught up to me, grabbed my arm, and pulled me to the side of the playground. "What's gotten into you?" He frowned, questioning me. I didn't back down either, shaking off his hand. "How many times do I have to tell you for you to understand? I just want to study." Once I finished speaking, I wanted to leave. He raised his big hand to stop me, his eyes full of incredulity. "You study if you want to study. Why don't you bring me breakfast? Why did you give the things intended for me to someone else? Why don't you wait for me to go home together at night?" His voice trailed off. I finished his last sentence for him. "Why can't I reject you? Are you made of gold?" He became angry, gritted his teeth to contain his emotions. In the past, it was always him rejecting me, acting superior, and only caring about his own feelings. He enjoyed the favoritism I showed him, while giving all his love to someone else, and for me, just a piece of candy would make me happy. I was so foolish in the past, foolish as if all the men in the world had disappeared, leaving only him. After a moment of silence, John finally uttered, "Joy, you weren't like this before." I looked at him. "John, only a fool would have liked you before. Go be lovey-dovey with your Alice. Don't flutter around me like a fly." With that, I walked away. I heard John's low growl behind me. "Fine, Joy, you won't regret this." After the day we parted ways at the playground, Alice would come up 3 floors every morning to bring breakfast for John. During breaks, she would prepare drinks for him, even during our shared physical education class. She would wipe his sweat and offer him water while playing basketball. Rumors started spreading that they were a couple. John didn't deny it, but there were still some curious souls who asked me for my opinion. I was struggling with a tough physics problem, unable to solve it. So I poked Stephen beside me with a pen to get his attention. With a quick gesture, I slid the exam paper over to him. Just wrote down one step. Couldn't figure out the rest. Stephen glanced at the question, his hands with distinct knuckles reaching for a nearby pen. Sensing he was about to explain it to me, I eagerly brought my notebook closer. I saw a flash of a smile crossing his lips. For this question, you need to use this formula. Let's start by understanding the problem. Stephen, being the academic he was, explained it in such plain terms that it became crystal clear to me in no time. In just a few words, he helped me make sense of it. Seizing the opportunity, I handed him my list of mistakes. Could you take a look at these for me? I understand some of them, but I can't find a pattern in others. Taking the mistake book, his fingertips brushed mine. His hands were cool. I quickly pulled back. He focused earnestly on the problems I had copied down, and suddenly I remembered how silly I had been before, with the academic ace sitting right beside me, and all I could think of was dating. How foolish. Just as he was about to speak, I inched closer to him, not anticipating a basketball hurtling towards me. The next second, a sharp pain shot through my nose, warm liquid trickling down. Before I could even identify the culprit, John rushed over and held me upright, quickly pressing a tissue against my nose from his bag. His tone was filled with an unspoken concern. Does it hurt? Then, he tried to lead me to the bathroom. I shrugged off his hand, and coldly looked at him. John, are you out of your mind? Picking up the basketball at my feet, I flung it at him. He stood still, eyes downcast, then glanced between me and Stephen, sneering. Joy, is your affection so short-lived? Short-lived? That nearly made me burst into laughter. In my previous life, I had revolved around him for over 20 years. When we got married, he tearfully vowed to protect me forever, keeping me from harm. I believed in him time and time again, enabling his behavior, because he had played a part in my entire life. I had naively thought that growing old with him would be a romantic journey, but I overestimated him and underestimated my own feelings. A tinge of sourness crept into my heart, yet I met his gaze directly. John, everyone knows you're dating Alice now. Just go ahead with your relationship. Why involve me and make me a pawn in your game? My voice wasn't loud, but audible to everyone in the classroom. A chuckle rippled through the crowd. John, taken aback, moved to grab my hand to explain. I'm not dating her. I dodged his grasp, turning to the side. Oh, keeping someone as a backup again, huh? You're despicable. She made the first move, and with that, the door was abruptly pushed open. Alice, her eyes red, stood there, with the dropped drinks intended for John by her feet. She wiped her teary eyes, then turned and ran away. I saw John clenching his fists. The next moment, he chased after her. After sitting back down, Stephen handed me a wet tissue from his bag. Do you want to go to the bathroom? I shook my head. No need. There were some bloodstains on my pants, dried, with faint red spots. I tried to wipe them off, but they wouldn't come off. It was strange, because I wasn't feeling anything, yet, my eyes inexplicably stung. So I quickly lowered my head. Every time there was a choice to make, I had always been the one left behind. Even in this new life, it was still poignant. But I thought, perhaps this was just a reflex from the 20-something Joy. So, I pinched my palm hard, feeling a strong sensation of pain. In my mind, I silently repeated, 17-year-old Joy, this time I must win. The next second, Stephen's clear voice reached me. These questions have multiple solutions. Do you want to hear them? I wiped my face with my hand, lifted my head to him, showing a big toothy smile. Go ahead. That night after self-study, Stephen pushed his meticulously organized physics notes in front of me. You might find these helpful. I flipped through, admiring his neat handwriting which summarized each key point. In the previous life, he had made it to Harvard. I heard he returned to our place after graduation, for reasons unknown. I wrote a note and handed it to him. Stephen, do you think I could get into Harvard if I start working hard from now on? He unfolded the note, warm light casting shadows of his dense lashes on his face. Below his high nose bridge, he gave a slight smirk, and began to write. My heart raced up to my throat, fearing he might write, with your current level, it's difficult. But as he unfolded the note, I read only one phrase, you can. Perhaps driven by my strong desire to change my fate, or supported by the confirmation from the academic ace, I ignited a fierce determination within me. I started organizing my notes in all subjects, reorganizing the knowledge from scratch. Previously, I had relied on a hint of cleverness, never fully grasping the concepts. Now, I started from the basics, thoroughly chewing on the content from the textbooks. Thanks to sharing a desk with Stephen, I utilized this academic resource to the fullest. even managing to get his contact information for better consultation on tricky subjects. On his Instagram, there were very few posts, but one thing repeated: a sunflower pot. Perhaps the sunflower held a special significance to him, just like how John would sporadically share images of daisies on his social media. Later, I understood, it represented Alice. Recently, Alice hadn't come up to bring breakfast for John, but surprisingly, I found a bottle of yogurt and a bread on my desk. I asked Stephen, "Is this yours?" He shook his head. A female classmate behind me nudged my back, whispering, "I arrived early, John brought it." After their silent showdown, they sought attention from me once again. I didn't even bother to look at him, and walked to the back of the classroom to toss the trash. Upon my return, John extended his foot to block my way, eyes harboring hidden anger. "What are you implying, Joy?" Not understanding his question, he gestured towards the trash bin. "I bought breakfast. Is this your attitude?" I laughed at him. "John, are you God? Do I need to kneel down and worship you for a single breakfast?" He clenched his teeth in frustration. "Joy, have you had enough of playing around? How can I get you to listen to me?" Crossing my arms, I glanced over my shoulder, shooting back the same words he used in the previous life. "Are you done yet? Can't you find something meaningful to do?" "I'm busy." Then, bypassing his foot, I returned to my seat. John muttered under his breath, "Fine, Joy, you're something." I indeed transformed, skyrocketing from the middle to the top 15 ranks in our monthly exams. Of course, Stephen dominated, staying firmly in first place, outscoring the rest by a significant margin. Glancing at the rankings, I privately wished I could be just behind him one day. So, I redoubled my efforts, practically utilizing every hour of the day. I even regretted wasting my time on John in the past 2 years. After standing by the honor roll for a moment, I got up to leave, only to realize Stephen was standing beside me. I gestured towards the photos. They came out really nice. For the past couple of years, his name always topped the list. He followed my gaze, nodding in agreement without false modesty. As we headed back to the classroom, he suddenly said, "Joy, are you sure you want to aim for Harvard University?" I looked up at him. The sunset's glow enveloped his shoulders, tinting his white shirt in warmth. His gaze was sincere and bright, reflecting my own image. Meeting his eyes, I nodded emphatically. "Yes, Stephen, one day I'll be right by your name." However, I didn't expect Alice to come looking for me. In the previous life, I had no interaction with her throughout high school. In this life, I think maybe, because I changed the storyline, some relationships between characters also changed. She cornered me in gym class, and I was afraid something indefensible would happen. So, I opened the video recording function on my phone. She came up wanting to slap me, but I blocked it in the nick of time. I shrugged off her hand, and she glared at me fiercely. "Joy, are you a slut? Do you think John will like you because of these tricks?" I laughed. "You seem to have a completely undeveloped brain, and your cerebellum is not fully developed." "Huh. Why do I need his liking? How much is his liking worth?" "You like him? Go find him. Why use me as your punching bag? I am not a trash can. I don't recycle everything." I really didn't want to get entangled with her anymore. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my hand. "Let me tell you, John likes me. If you have any sense, you'll stay away from him." I smirked. "If you're sick, go see a doctor. I don't care who John likes. Why bother finding trouble with me here when you could be solving a few more math problems to nourish your barren brain? No wonder they say you and John are a match. Both of you can't understand a word of reason." I didn't want to say much to such a person. Just as I walked towards the football field, Alice caught up and blocked me again. The next second, a soccer ball came flying towards us. Thanks to her blocking my view, the ball hit her directly. She fell to the ground, and due to being held by her, inertia made me fall to the ground too. John ran over from not far away. "What's going on?" Alice held her forehead, tearfully looking at him. "My head hurts and I feel dizzy. Did I get a concussion?" Good grief. I really suspect that the head growing on her neck is just for show. If getting hit on the body can cause a concussion, medical students would have to take her to investigate on the spot. I sneered, but she held onto John's leg. "I just wanted to apologize to Joy. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted her not to ignore you. Don't be mad at her, okay?" It's this kind of plot again. I've seen it too many times in the previous life, and every time I retorted, John would look at me coldly, telling me not to stir up trouble. This time, I didn't say anything and tried to get up with my hands. However, John rushed to my side in one swift step. He picked me up directly. "Where are you hurt? Let me see." This action shocked both Alice on the ground and me in his arms. He lowered his head to look at Alice without any warmth in his tone. "You don't study, and you come to find her. Didn't I make it clear last time? I don't like you. Stop coming to me." And if I catch you bothering Joy's studies again, don't blame me for being rude to you. I made John put me down on the way. Just a little skin abrasion on my hands, not even bleeding, but John stubbornly insisted on putting a band-aid on me. Lowering his head, he, who had always been proud, for the first time let down his guard and pleaded in his voice, Joy, after the basketball incident where you were accidentally hit, I haven't had any contact with Alice. So can you stop treating me like this? I always felt like I had forgotten something from the previous life in the fire scene, but I couldn't remember no matter how hard I tried. But I still didn't want to have any involvement with John. He would bring breakfast, and I would give it to the chubby guy in front. He would bring snacks, and I would distribute them to everyone before evening study. He would prepare gifts for me, and I would return them all. Our relationship seemed to have changed. He started doing things for me that I used to do for him. But me, I still ignored him, to be precise. I simply didn't have the time to tangle with him. I was focused solely on studying, on closing the distance with Stephen. Because there's a saying that goes, if you set your goals high, even if you don't reach them, you won't be too far off. I printed out that saying and stuck it on the table, and I wrote beneath it in black ink, Harvard, wait for me. When Stephen saw it, he smiled. I looked at him. What's so funny? Do you think I'm childish? He shook his head. No, I don't. Then why are you smiling? Stephen didn't say anything, but he picked up a pen and added a sentence behind that statement. Wait for me at Harvard. I'm not sure if that sentence was for me or for him, but I still remember, on a sunny afternoon in autumn, with a breeze brushing the classroom curtains, a bright and fresh young man in school uniform tightly holding a pen, earnestly writing down his dreams. We exchanged a smile. Turns out, even in our student days, we could share unspoken understanding with someone about dreams. Days passed quickly, and the midterm exams arrived as scheduled. This time, I improved a little in ranking, just getting into the top 10. Even the class teacher noticed my progress, and called me in for a private chat in the office. Inside, Stephen was helping the teacher prepare some materials. The teacher mentioned that they would hold 2 extra classes during evening study per week for the top 5 students in the grade to tutor them separately. It was aimed at grooming Ivy League students. He said he saw my potential and hoped I could make it into the top 5 as well. I nodded. Okay, teacher. I will work hard. There was still a certain gap to reach the top 5. I did a self-assessment of my situation again. Now, my weaknesses were physics and biology. Physics had always been a challenge for me, but it also meant there was a lot of room for improvement. As for biology, it was because I didn't like memorizing things. Ultimately, it was my weak foundation. After coming out of the office, I bumped into Stephen just coming out as well. On the way back to the classroom, he called out to me, Joy. I turned around, and he had a relaxed expression, devoid of any distance. I believe you can make it into the top 5. I paused, then smiled. I believe in myself too, but for now, I really need to improve in physics and biology. I need to work harder. As the sky dimmed, the campus streetlights lit up one by one, and the lights of the distant skyscrapers shone brightly. Stephen and I walked side by side on the way back to the classroom. When we were close to the door, I heard Stephen say, Joy, I'll help you. No one could refuse the invitation of a top student, and Stephen really followed through, patiently going over physics concepts with me. He explained the thought process behind each problem, and constantly drew diagrams to help me visualize. After a while, I felt a definite improvement in my problem-solving approach, but for biology, he took a direct devilish approach, making me memorize. I protested. Really? I avoided studying history, because I don't like rote learning. Stephen's face turned stern. No, in order not to disturb others, he would wait by the playground every evening study session to make sure I finished the assigned tasks. One day while reciting, snowflakes suddenly drifted down from the sky. Under the illumination of the lights, they fell quietly and gently, then melted in my palm. Many classmates were leaning against the window admiring the scene, taking pictures. I looked at the snowflakes and asked, Stephen, I want to go to Harvard, what about you? His gaze lingered on my face for a moment before picking up a snowflake. Me too. Stephen, I will definitely get in. I know, he replied. I lowered my head, feeling a bit sentimental for some reason. Thinking about all the things from the previous life felt like a dream. Such absurd things. No one could understand. I was very afraid of failing again, and still not being able to change my fate. I could only bear it on my own and turn all the sadness into stepping stones to move forward. Perhaps noticing my silence for a while, Stephen sat beside me and softly asked, Joy, if you're feeling upset, you can talk to me. Around the playground, people came and went. Snowflakes fluttered above us. I looked up, biting my lip hard, fearing that tears would fall in the next second. I didn't want to admit defeat. I couldn't afford to lose. Stephen, want to make a bet with me? His voice carried a hint of a chuckle. Bet on what? Bet on whether you'll catch up to me when the last snowflake falls. I heard his answer. You'll win. Before the final exams, Stephen and I were called into the class teacher's office for a chat. This final exam was also the first mock exam. It said that the results of this exam would predict the results of the college entrance exam. So, the class teacher had a chat with the top 10 students, advising us not to be nervous and to face it with a calm mind. I didn't expect to come out and bump into John and Alice head on. Alice wanted to stir up trouble. Isn't this top student Stephen? Joy, how come, after giving up on John, you're running after Stephen now? John's face darkened. Stephen seemed like he wanted to say something, but I stopped him. I felt it wasn't necessary to waste words on her, but she sarcastically added, already holding hands, Joy. Not enough with John, now you're running to Stephen. These words were too much. No wonder there was a foul smell from miles away. Turns out your bad breath isn't cured yet. Huh. And you, the bottom of the class student, barely passing your courses, daring to talk smack here. Just as Alice was about to retort, John cut in. Are you done? She was, inexplicably yelled at, and tears welled up in her eyes. John, how can you talk to me like this when I'm speaking up for you? Do you have no conscience? Annoying. I didn't want to get entangled with them, so I pulled Stephen to go back. But John suddenly spoke up by the side. Stephen, let's have a chat. I didn't know what they talked about, but when I got back to the classroom, John's demeanor seemed to have changed suddenly. I leaned close to Stephen. Did he hit you? He shook his head. Just talked. What were you talking about? What kind of conversation do men have? You'll know after the college entrance exam. Stephen held up the physics test paper that had just been handed out and asked, free time. All right. Explain the logic behind this question to me. Before the final exam, Stephen slipped me a candy. Eating it made me feel better. And when I feel good, I understand the questions better. I held the candy and said, don't worry, but you better do well in the exam, or I'll surpass you. Stephen smiled and didn't say anything. After the last exam, as the sun came out after the rain, the winter sunshine made everything warm. John was waiting outside the classroom for me. My mom says she hasn't seen you in a long time. Come home with me for dinner. I really didn't want to go. Sometimes I wonder if in a past life, John and I didn't end up together. Could we still be friends? The answer is no. I can't be friends with someone I have feelings for. Just like now. I can't act like nothing happened just because this time around John hasn't hurt me yet. The kindness I showed him before felt like something he took for granted, using my feelings as a bargaining chip to make Alice jealous. I can't forgive him, so the best option is to keep my distance from him. I stepped back to a safe distance, looking at him shaking my head. I'm not going. I need to go buy study materials. John's eyes showed a hint of pain, his voice filled with confusion. Joy, tell me, where did I go wrong? If I wronged you in the past, I've changed. What did I do wrong? Can you tell me? Please don't look at me with those unfamiliar eyes. If you really want to make amends, then stop bothering me. I walked past him and he stood in the hallway, his bangs falling over his eyes. Perhaps it was my imagination, but I thought I saw his eyes turn red. When the final exam scores were announced, I was ranked 5th, especially in my worst subject, physics. I had shown significant improvement. I took a picture of my grades and sent it to Stephen. Look, my scores have improved. He quickly replied, you still need to improve. After all, certain individuals have said they want to catch up to me. That scared me. So I quickly did 2 more practice papers to calm my nerves. During the winter break, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, I locked myself at home to focus on studying. My mom worried about me. If you continue studying like this, you might turn into a nerd. She didn't understand. It's not that I'm focused on studying. I just don't want to see John. Besides, studying had become addicting. I wished I could spend all day at home. As usual, my parents were probably hanging out with friends and would come home late. Writing late into the night, I glanced out the window and saw it was snowing again. The snow was falling heavier, forming a thick layer on the ground. I put on my down jacket, ready to go build a snowman. As I went outside, I realized I had forgotten to wear a scarf. Oh well, I'd go back up soon anyway. I crouched down, and had just finished shaping the first big snowball when I suddenly noticed a pair of shoes in front of me. Looking up, it was John. He was carrying a thermos in his hand. I glanced at him and continued rolling the second snowball. You didn't come. I was worried there wouldn't be anyone at home to cook for you. So I brought this, he said. I ignored him and continued making the snowballs. The cold breeze blew into my nose, making me sneeze. The next moment, John moved to put his scarf around my neck. I reached out to stop him. There's no need. His hand paused in midair, and after a moment, he withdrew it as he crouched down. Let me help you. When I was young, I loved playing in the snow and building snowmen with John. He always said my snowmen didn't look right. Despite his critical words, his hands never stopped moving. I took the opportunity to throw a snowball at his neck. As I did, I realized he had grown much taller than me. I tried to playfully tease him, but he dodged my snowball, causing us both to fall into the snow together. We both gasped for breath, but couldn't stop laughing. Lying next to him in the snow, I couldn't help but wish we could stay like this forever. However, at 18, we were just silent companions. I spent a long time in the snow, and John stayed with me for the whole time. It was only when I placed the rubber band as a mouth on the snowman that I heard his trembling voice. I don't know why I got involved with Alice. I never intended to be with her. Nothing happened between us. I don't like her, Joy. You're the most important to me. We've been together for 18 years. Can't you forgive me? As he spoke, his voice choked with emotion. You once said you would marry me when we grew up. Snowflakes fell on John's head and body, but I no longer cared. I tightened my hat and said in a calm tone, consider that I have changed, John. Every moment we spent together makes me sick now. I no longer like you, and this is where we part ways. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my hand. Do you really like Stephen now? I shrugged, using the same words he had once said to me in a previous life. If that's what you think, then there's nothing I can do. As I went upstairs that day, John remained standing below, as if frozen in place. I closed the window and went back to my desk to continue studying. John sent me a photo. It was the Lego set I gave him last New Year. A large one. I didn't reply to him. It was only close to midnight when Stephen sent me a message. Happy New Year. Just as I was about to reply, a file of 492 was sent to me. It contained a concise summary of physics. I opened it to find all the key points and corresponding classic questions neatly arranged by Stephen. This didn't intimidate me. So I compiled the key points of other subjects and sent them back to him. Soon, Stephen called me, Joy, this time you must do well. You will get into Harvard, and you will have a brighter future. Stephen's voice carried that magnetic charm of a teenager, and I smiled. Why are you suddenly saying all this? The air fell silent, and after a moment, I heard his response. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep up with you. I laughed. Stephen, you will. The winter break passed quickly, and it was time to go back to school. Thanks to my top 5 ranking, I could finally join the study sessions with the top students during evening self-study and benefit from teachers' individual guidance. We 5 were like sponges, absorbing the knowledge the teachers provided, filling ourselves up every time before class. As we discussed our dreams of university life, our eyes sparkled with hope. The school assembly came once again. This time, Stephen took the stage as the student representative to lead the oath. In his closing words, he said, I hope everyone faces the sun and moves towards the light. I was slightly taken aback. I remembered my self-introduction in the first year of high school. I'm Joy, born facing the sun, just like a sunflower, always moving towards the light. I looked towards the stage, and from a distance, it felt like Stephen's gaze fell on my face. Each piece of paper, each exam, became a part of the daily life in the final semester of high school. The gap between Stephen's scores and mine narrowed even further. Just as I was about to boast, he held me back, asking me to take out the physics test paper to analyze the mistakes. I obediently corrected my mistakes, did more practice, and continued practicing similar questions. In the days just before the college entrance exam, during the evening self-study, Stephen suddenly called out to me, Joy, during the exam, you have to give it your all. I smiled. I definitely will. I'm praying to the heavens for a chance to start over. How can I not cherish it? If you have any problems, be sure to tell me. If you need help, come find me. Got it. I turned around. He smiled, shook his head, and his eyes were clear and bright. Harvard is beautiful. Then, he took out a souvenir from his bag and placed it on my desk. I hope it brings you good luck. I picked it up. Why are you giving it to me now? Thank you. After that, there was only the sound of our pens scratching the paper. I turned my head to look at him. The warm light of the classroom cast a golden hue on his hair, making him look gentle all over. Stephen, I called out to him. Good luck with Harvard. He smiled. Good. I was fully prepared, but on my way to the exam, someone blocked my path. Several ruffians stood in front of me. I frowned and tried to walk around them. They laughed and blocked me again. One of them, with red hair, smirked. The top student is going to the college entrance exam. It's confirmed. He came specifically for me. I believed that after a year of studying diligently, I hadn't offended anyone. There was only one person who could send them after me. Did Alice send you? Who sent us doesn't matter. We just wanted to show you what's what before your exam today. Anything that happens, we'll settle after the exam. Is that okay with you? The group of ruffians looked at me as if I were a joke. I realized that trying to fight them head-on wouldn't work. Their goal was clear. They didn't want me to make it to the exam today. But after all the hard work I had put in, how could I allow myself to miss it? As I reached for my emergency call button in my pocket, I heard John's voice behind me. Ganging up on a girl with so many people. What kind of behavior is that? The red-haired one snorted. I advise you not to meddle in matters that don't concern you. I saw them getting ready for a fight, and realizing that they outnumbered us, John and I, the outcome seemed clear. So, I tugged at John, prompting him to charge forward. Before we could react, the leader with red hair charged towards us. John shielded me and told me to run. Then he got into a scuffle with them. I took the chance to run out and happened to bump into Stephen at the intersection. He quickly called the police. Luckily, because the college entrance examination was a big event, there were many police officers maintaining order on the streets. After explaining the situation, I asked them to hurry and save John. With only 5 minutes left before the exam started, the police escorted us safely to the school. Before entering, Stephen handed me a candy and said, "Joy, good luck." Thinking about my goal of going to Harvard, I nodded. 2 days flew by like a dream. I only remember the clear sky, the sound of cicadas, and the light shining through the leaves rustled by the wind. Fortunately, on that day, John managed to enter the exam room even though he was 10 minutes late for the first subject. Thankfully, he didn't miss the exam. I didn't want to owe him any favors. However, after an investigation revealed no evidence, it was concluded that those troublemakers were just causing a scene. So they were given a verbal warning, but I knew, behind the scenes, it had to be Alice. In the evening, there was a class gathering. Coincidentally, Alice and her classmates were in the same place. I walked over with a glass of wine and poured it over her head. She let out a scream. I then played the recording in which she said, "Joy, are you shameless or what?" Her face turned pale instantly. I grabbed her chin and said, "Alice, let's have a talk about you sending someone to block me from taking the entrance exam. This is something we need to address." A hint of panic flashed in her eyes. I had guessed right, but she suddenly screamed, "Joy, you're crazy. If you dare, call the police." Maybe I was crazy. If I could start over, I had nothing more to lose or care about. I smiled at her classmates and said, "It's a personal matter. Let us handle it first." Then I grabbed her hand and tried to take her to a secluded room. Midway, John walked over. I raised my eyes and said, "Move aside, Alice." As if she had found a savior, grabbed John's sleeve and said, "John, it's not me. Quickly deal with Joy, this shameless person." "Joy," John spoke. I looked at him, expecting him to act as a protector again. But his next words surprised me. "This matter, leave it to me, don't soil your hands." Then, ignoring Alice's screams, he covered her mouth and took her to an unmonitored area. I had no mood to continue the gathering, so I sat on a nearby chair. Suddenly, I felt it was all pointless. I didn't understand why John had changed this time around, but it was all too late. I touched my heart. Did I hate him? I think I did. I despised him for trampling on my love, for me paying the price of my life for my lack of clarity. Did I love him? Perhaps in the previous life, but it was all wiped out by that sudden fire. Feeling extremely thirsty, I desperately needed a drink. A bottle of water was handed to me. It was Stephen. For some reason, I felt a bit guilty. He must have seen what happened earlier. I hesitated and looked at him. "Do you think I'm malicious?" He shook his head, walked towards me, and sat beside me, under the bright light. His eyes remained cold, feeling better. For a moment, I was surprised but quickly turned my head, nodded, then shook it. Taking revenge didn't bring the joy I had imagined. He took out a bottle of yogurt from his bag, opened it, and handed it to me. I drank a sip and chuckled. "Stephen, you seem to have no idea how to cheer up a girl." I saw his face turning red instantly, even his ears blushing. After a pause, he finally spoke, "Then teach me." The gathering continued. I didn't know how John had resolved things. Alice was nowhere to be found that night, and he became quite strange after returning. He often glanced at me, with emotions I couldn't comprehend in his eyes. It seemed like he had aged all of a sudden. Amid various toasting activities from classmates, he walked up to me with a glass, and suddenly, a few tears rolled down his face. He said, "I'm sorry, Joy, it's all in the past now. John, I hope our entanglement ends here. I really don't want to be stuck in the quagmire of this relationship. Suffering. I just want to stay away from people who make me uncomfortable." From then on, we never saw each other again, which was for the best. But John still dragged me into a secluded room, in the dim space, all I could hear was our breathing. After a moment of silence, John looked at my belly, his eyes reddening. I heard him suppressing his voice and asking, "Joy, do we have a child?" I was stunned and looked at him. He closed his eyes in pain. It turned out that because of how I had hurt him before, he had become like this, and finally, I remembered something I had forgotten all this time. Why did Alice come to the house that day? It was because I met her at the hospital during my checkup. I was pregnant. The prenatal report showed that it was already 6 weeks, and the fetus had a heartbeat. Her face instantly turned pale. I was so excited and wanted to tell John the good news after work, but I was met by Alice instead. If we were both in a desperate situation, who do you think he would choose? Like the last straw that broke the camel's back, I finally realized and decided to divorce. It's just that I didn't expect a sudden fire to break out. The fire was strange, as the flames consumed me. I waved a piece of paper and called out for John, but he didn't hear me. He didn't even look back. What was my feeling at that moment? It seemed like I had no feelings, not even a tear shed, but now, my vision instantly blurred. I lightly touched my belly. I realized that I hadn't cried. I hadn't cried despite being abandoned numerous times. I didn't cry when he failed to rescue me and our child, even when I was reborn. I didn't cry. But now, I cried, not for myself, but for the little one yet to be born in my belly. John reached out to touch me but I dodged, saying, "Don't touch me, you make me feel disgusted." He stood there, looking frail, as if he had aged all of a sudden. He choked up, "Joy, I'm sorry. John, it's too late. I will never forgive you." I clenched his collar tightly, my voice trembling. "John, you made me feel sick." I could tell he squatted down, pulling his hair. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Like a pitiful man who had lost his true love. After a while, he raised his head, eyes bloodshot, and tried to touch my hand. "I was such a jerk before, Joy. I'm sorry for you and the child." He seemed to only know one phrase, "I'm sorry, but it couldn't be okay, believe it or not. I saved her just because she was closer to the exit. I was thinking to quickly carry her out and come back to save you. So I didn't turn back." "No, John, if I were the most important to you, you wouldn't have another man in your eyes." I struck a nerve, and he shook, despondent, gazing at me in pain and despair. Finally, as if he made a decision, he said to me, "Can I have one last hug?" I stepped back a few steps and shook my head. I thought it was unnecessary. As I was about to leave, his voice seemed to come from a distance, "Joy, I will give you and our child an explanation." But it was too late. I didn't care anymore. After the gathering dispersed, I drank until I was unsteady, feeling so uncomfortable. My heart felt like it was being pounded heavily, almost suffocating me. Stephen held my hand, his eyes filled with tenderness. "If you feel sad, just cry it out." Tears fell one by one, hitting his hand and then the ground, and I blacked out for a moment. I kept my head down, trying hard to control myself. I thought I had already cried all my tears earlier, but I hadn't. They wouldn't listen to me, falling uncontrollably. In the summer night breeze, Stephen gently embraced me, pulling me into his arms. His youthful scent instantly enveloped me. "Joy, it's over." I held onto his shoulders tightly, not letting a sound escape. He patted my back gently, speaking with a gentle and firm tone. "We both will have a better future." It was the last time I saw John. He came to call me downstairs from my house. I leaned out the window. He was wearing a blue t-shirt, looking fresh and bright, completely different from that night. I was about to close the window when John waved and smiled. "Joy, goodbye." I didn't expect that on this ordinary afternoon, this farewell would have this meaning. A certain community had a sudden fire, and when the firefighters arrived, the two inside showed no signs of life. It was reported that the two were college entrance examination candidates this year, and the specific situation is under investigation by relevant departments. On that day, the exam results were released. John and Alice died in that fire. When I attended John's funeral, his parents handed me a box. I opened it, and there was a photo inside. It was a picture of me and John graduating from middle school. I was smiling happily, while he had a sour expression on his face. On the back, there was a line that I wrote, "Joy, be like a sunflower, be John's little son." There was also a black hair tie that I left on the snowman that snowy night, and a letter that John left for me. "Joy, I'm sorry, I'm a jerk. I didn't realize in my past life, I treated you so poorly. I really want to kill myself. I actually didn't dislike you, on the contrary, I love you. I just sometimes couldn't tell if what I felt for you was love or just habit, until Alice showed up. Her personality was different from yours. I thought I liked her. But I didn't want to lose you. I admit I'm despicable, thinking about all the things I did to you in the past. I want to go back and beat up that John. That day Stephen asked me what I could do to make you happy, to make you better. I didn't do anything. I only made you HYST Stephenal, he said. If I wanted to make you happy, I should remove all obstacles in your way. I only learned later that he did no less than I did. He even had someone teach Alice a lesson and warned her not to come see you. I didn't know any of this. He looks so cold, with eyes only for studying, and yet he can have such a fierce look in his eyes. I thought this time you were upset, because of Alice. So I distanced myself from her early on, hoping to regain your attention, but you were just indifferent to me. My heart ached more than any physical pain. It wasn't until the day of the party that I remembered everything, that I realized we were actually married in our past life. If the 18-year-old John knew now, he would definitely be thrilled. But you died in that big fire, because of me. The fire in the previous life was set by Alice. So let me do something for you in this life. I really wish the 18-year-old John would die so there wouldn't be the 25-year-old John who hurt you. If you are reading this letter, it means I succeeded. Joy, in this life, you must be happy. Don't remember me. If there is another life, I will personally make amends to you. Don't push me away, okay? Also, in this life, the 18-year-old John loves Joy. When I walked out, Stephen was there to pick me up. The sunlight was painfully bright. I could barely open my eyes. If you feel uncomfortable, you can lean on my shoulders. Do I want to cry? No, just feeling melancholic. In the past life, I paid the price for my obsession. In this life, John is atoning with his life. To think, the ending turned out this way, a development I hadn't foreseen. That day, Stephen and I walked around the lake over and over. I didn't speak, but he stayed with me all the way, until the stars shone brightly, and his eyes still bright. The new school year came in the blink of an eye, and Stephen and I sat on the same plane. On the plane, I asked him, Stephen, why do you want to go to Harvard? Because, you want to. Why do you like sunflowers? I remember at the beginning of the school year, a classmate stood up to introduce herself. She said, my name is Joy, born welcoming the sun. I'm like a sunflower, always facing the light. Stephen, have you secretly liked me since freshman year? Yes. So do you want to give it a chance to turn into something more serious? It wasn't until much later that I found out. The connection between Stephen and me had already been there in the past life. It felt like a cycle. In this life, it was because I said I wanted to go to Harvard that Stephen wanted to go to Harvard. And in the past life, Stephen went to Harvard because of me wanting to go in this life. I smiled and held his hand. Then, I look forward to the future. What do you use to make the exchange? I use my soul. Stephen, you have to know, the dead can't come back to life. I know, that's why I hope for a fresh start. In this new life, can you guarantee that Joy won't repeat the same mistakes? I don't know. I just hope that she can live a better life, even if it means sacrificing my own life for her. What if the outcome remains the same? Will you regret it? No, I will never regret it. The day we were reborn together, when John confessed his love to her, she walked past the crowd and came to me. I think, Stephen, no matter how it ends, you're worth it.